Alright, welcome back traders to another video. In today's video, it's going to be something a little bit different, something a little more special than what we're used to. In today's video, we're going to be talking about astrology and Forex and how the lunar phases, the moon, and even the solar system, planets, and everything outer space can affect the charts. Now, and this is going to be a two-part series. In the first part, we're going to talk a lot more about the technicals, how they line up with the moon phases, the full moon and the new moon. And then in the second part, we're going to talk a little bit more about the psychology behind it, which in my opinion, I think is the more important part. But we got to stick with the technicals at first to see what we see on those charts. So as you can see, I already have my chart charted up with the moons. And I'll just do a little key for you guys right here so that you kind of understand what's going on and you're not just looking at this chart and you're thinking, what the heck is going on? But just to actually show you guys, we are going to label these moons so that way you know which one to tell apart from the other. And for this first one, this is going to be the full moon. The full one is white. It's full of light. That's just kind of how I remember it, and the full moon is just brighter. So this first one we're going to call the full moon. And then what we're going to do is label this next one, and we're just going to name it the new moon. So that way you guys can distinguish between each of them. So obviously the full moon is the lighter one, the new moon is this one. Now what's really cool is I didn't even notice this before starting to record this today, but we are actually on a full moon right now. So November 12th, 2019, there's a full moon. So after this video, it might be interesting to see where this ends up going and, you know, how this full moon affects these markets. And obviously in the part two, we're going to talk a little more about the psychology of it. But in this, we're just going to stick to the charts and just see how these affect the charts. So we're just going to start from it. I got my references from like 4 different websites. I wanted to make sure that all of them were accurate. So as we can see, we start down here. It says full moon on November 12th, 2019. And then you kind of just follow along. So the next one's October 13th, September 13th, August 15th, so on and so forth. I'm not going to bore you guys with going through all these, but as a reference, you can go to this website or you can just type in full moon calendar, new moon calendar, lunar phases, whatever. It all comes up the same. So that's where I got this stuff from. And as we can see, if you look in the bottom corner, or not the bottom corner, but the bottom part of the chart, you can see that it says 11 November 19. So it's the day, month, year. So that way we can match up these moons and make sure that we're correct and see how crazy accurate some of these moons are with the activity in the charts. So obviously for the first one, we're going to chart up and I have it written down too for the full and new moons, so that way we can kind of just fly by this and see how crazy it is. But for the first one, obviously we have a full moon with it being white, and then it's on November 12th, which is obviously today, the day of the recording. And obviously this hasn't played out yet because it's still going, but it would be kind of crazy to see. We'll come back to this, but just remember, today's the full moon. So the next thing we're going to is the new moon, which would be on October 27th. And as you can see again in that bottom corner, it says 27 October. And right here, we have that new moon. So I'm not going to go through all of them and bore you guys, but as you can see, I'll just kind of line up my crosshairs along with the full and new moons. And you can see that they're pretty accurate. But the one thing that I really wanted to show you guys, the one thing that I thought really blew me away, was the correlation with not only how these moons match up with each other, but also the effects that they have and the timing from creating trends in the charts, creating reversals in the charts, and all that crazy stuff. So I'll go all the way back to here, where this new moon is on April 5th of 2019. I didn't go any farther back because I didn't really think I needed to, but we can start from here and kind of just see the correlation, the accuracy of these moons. And again, I'm not saying go on these charts, fund your account with some, real money and then just start trading off of moons and just off when there's a full moon or a new moon, buy or sell the market. I mean, you need to understand the market structure and everything else within the market and your analysis and all that. But it is really cool that after this video, I think you guys notice that trading on a full and new moon can affect the markets in such a huge way. And so obviously for this first one, the one thing I wanted to bring your guys' attention to was the reversals of these new and full moons and how often they happen. So obviously I will go just to this brushing tool, and we can just mark off every time that we see a either major or slight reversal in the market. So obviously this is a new moon, and we can see the market right on that new moon just shifted up. And then obviously through here, these next 3 phases were just consolidation. And then as we continue to go, obviously right here, nothing really happened. I mean, we did have that spike up, but nothing crazy there. This is one that really stuck out to me. Obviously, the full moon being right here, we had that kind of consolidation. Market wasn't really going anywhere. And then it just blew up right after this. We had that shoot up, little retracement. And this full moon is what really started this incline in the market. And then obviously we can see again, once market gets to some pretty all-time highs. I mean, the market hasn't been up in this point for a very, very long time. So obviously some crazy stuff happening. Obviously this is gold if you haven't noticed yet, but this is also on the 4-hour time frame. And then, so let's just keep going with this. So obviously we have another reversal right here, right? We get to those all-time highs, make that double top, and then reverse back down. And then right here we have another reversal. Once again, another reversal. And it just kind of seems like every time there's a new or full moon, more often than not, there's a reversal in the market. And I mean, again, in part 2, we'll talk about the psychology behind this, but you can just kind of go through this. And this is just on gold. I also have a Euro USD that's pretty crazy to show you guys after this as well. But it's insane to think when you look at big picture and just the day of when this is actually happening. So obviously, new moon, a full moon, and a new moon, that's 3 reversals in a row. And then we come in here, another full moon reversal. And it just seems like it happens time and time and time again. And obviously we're at all-time highs over in this area. And prior to this new moon, we were falling. New moon happens, and there's a rise up all the way to all-time highs. So you can see that this new moon is what really caused, and you know, maybe it wasn't the cause of it, but just from everything that I've been seeing in the markets, the way I've been, you know, back testing this and actually looking through these charts and how this happens, it really does seem like these moons correlate with a lot of this activity and these reversals and these trends in the market. And it's pretty crazy. I mean, it's something that you can definitely implement into your trading. I wouldn't say just buy or sell because there's a full or new moon in the market or happening. But if you do have an analysis or you do have some confluences happening and you're feeling like you could buy or sell the market and it ends up to line up on a full or new moon, that's another confluence for you. But again, there's also a quote that I have to look up at the end of this video that I think you guys will find really interesting. But let's kind of continue with this. So obviously in this new moon, this is where we see the market consolidate for so long. The new moon comes in on, when was it? It's around August 30th, around the start of September. And then that's exactly when we have the market push up to all-time highs. And this is the highest gold's been in a very, 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 very long time. As we can see, gold has not been up here for quite a bit. So those are some pretty significant things to take into consideration as well. And then obviously we're kind of nearing the end of this example. But as we continue, we can see that it just plays out so perfectly, right? We have another reversal on the full moon, another one on the new moon. And again, that brings us to today. Obviously, what will happen today? Will it skyrocket up or will it continue to fall like it sometimes has? So This is just one example. Obviously, I'm not saying this is like the holy grail of trading, but this is definitely something that I found extremely interesting. And the psychology behind it, I think, is what makes it so incredible. And I want you guys to remember one thing, that these markets move because of the amount of money that's put into it. So if there's a lot of buyers in the market, obviously the market's going to go up. And if there's a lot of sellers, market comes down. But when a lot of people are seeing one thing in the market, or a lot of people are feeling a certain way in the markets, they're going to feel like this market is coming down. So that induces seller activity, which allows the market to go down or up, or depending on what they see in the market. But a really interesting thing, obviously this is more for part 2, but the way that the moon affects people's emotions and how it correlates with these markets. I think if you guys stick to part 2, you'll see how crazy this really is. But enough on that talk. I do want to show you guys a little bit more on Euro USD, because I think it's even more powerful. I had this one charted up previously just so I could save some time and I wouldn't bore you guys. All these red arrows are points when the market either reversed or continued its trend. And so out of, I don't know, I want to say like 20 moons full and new moons that I charted up, way more than half of them were reversals. And as we can kind of see, right here's one of them. We can see that new moon shoots the market up. Another time, it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then obviously we are right here, November 12th. That big question mark of what is going to happen in the markets. So I don't know if you guys are seeing the same thing that I'm seeing, if you guys are seeing a confluence or any coincidences in the markets, but I really do think, and again, I mean, you can back test this. I mean, we can go all the way back. And I'm not just making this up. I'm not just throwing these moons on random dates and random reversal times, but like we can even chart out. You guys can back test this, right? Here's that full moon and new moon calendar, and we can see how accurate these things are. But again, November 12th is that full moon, and we have that little key up there so we remember. And then October 27th is that new moon. October 13th is that full moon. September 28th. And again, you can always check on the bottom of the screen so you can see it's day, month, year. And obviously this was a gap because it only goes from, so this was over the weekend. This was a Saturday, but you see the 27th of September and then switch over to the 29th. So obviously there was activity right here. This could have been another continuation or reversal. And then we get September 13th, August 30th. Another full moon would be that's August 15th. August 13th, sorry. August 13th. Then we have July 31st for that new moon. And then July 16th. And I mean, I'm not going to bore you guys and go all the way, but you can back test this yourself. I mean, this took me quite a bit of time just because I kept getting distracted. But these white ones are when the full moons happen, and these black moons are the new moon times. And you can just see the correlation between the market and how it moves. And even if you were to not only check the reversals, you can line these things up and you can see how powerful this is. Seeing that, these markets are pretty accurate, and how crazy it is that sometimes these events happen within, certain spots. Sometimes in perfection. So as we can see, these new moons and these full moons, there's a lot of correlation of the timing, the date, the place, all of this. And not only that, but we can check the trends of these things, right? The times that these moons are in uptrends and downtrends. And when there's a newer full moon, we can see that there's massive reversals happening in the market. And that's all due to these moons. Now, I don't know if you guys may think I'm a lunatic or if I'm crazy, but definitely leave your opinions in the comments below. I definitely find this really interesting, something that you can add into your trading and backtest and see how accurate it is and how these moons and these phases and all this stuff correlates with each other. And, you know, maybe this is that extra key that everyone's been looking for. There you go. So, obviously, this is not the Holy Grail. I'm not saying you should base your entire trading off of this, but it is pretty crazy with how astrology works with these markets, because remember, the markets are moved by people and their emotions and how much money they're putting in and what they're feeling at that time. So these markets are definitely moved around because of people's emotions, right? So definitely something really interesting to backtest. And then one last thing that I want to show you guys would be this. Okay, and this is exactly what I wanted to show you guys. If you guys have not heard of JP Morgan, he is basically the founder of Chase, JP Morgan, the bank. And it's kind of funny how that correlates with the Forex markets, because if you haven't yet, make sure to watch the video on the top 10 Forex traders in the world, because in there, those top 10 traders are all banks. And two of those banks are Chase and JP Morgan. But I find it really interesting that JP Morgan was quoted saying once, millionaires don't use astrology, the billionaires do. So with all that being wrapped up, that is a good place to stop while we transition into part 2 and go a little more into the psychology of things. And maybe you won't implement this into your trading, but just give it some food for thought. What can these moons, what can these lunar phases, what does astrology have to do with these markets? And even if it's not the markets, what does it have to do with our lives? How does it play out with our lives, and how can we implement this knowledge into our everyday living and see where it takes us? But if you guys like this video, definitely leave some comments. I found it super interesting. I hope you did too. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe so you can continue to get these awesome videos and these insights on the markets, and make sure to leave a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys on part 2.